Ever feel like life just
Ah.
throws you a curveball? Like everything you thought you knew is suddenly gone.
Yeah.
That's where we're headed today. Deep dive into all that's left is breath.
Okay.
It's an excerpt, a memoir. From stroke survivor, Akili Ka.
Wow.
And let me tell you, this isn't your typical medical story.
Okay.
This is about loss, resilience, and that incredible journey of like piecing yourself back together when everything familiar, it's just gone.
It's incredible what you said about Akili Ka's story. What makes it so powerful, it's the rawness. It's not like a doctor's report on
Right.
stroke recovery. It's so personal,
Yeah.
emotional.
Yeah.
It's their story in their own words.
They don't hold back. Like right from the start, this first excerpt, it throws you right into it. You can picture it. The neighbors going through belongings, furniture dumped by the curb next to these overflowing dumpsters, like the air. I can almost smell it, that thick smell,
Yeah.
And Akili Ka writes, most of my furniture has been tossed out with the trash.
Wow.
But you feel it, right? It's more than just stuff.
Absolutely. It's like their whole identity is tied up in those belongings, and suddenly it's garbage. Just like that.
Yeah.
That's where this whole idea of identity comes in,
Yeah.
Our sense of self. It's so connected to our surroundings. When that's disrupted, it's like we're losing a part of ourselves. Akili Ka even says, ravenous neighbors.
Oh.
Which, just think about that for a second. That feeling of being so exposed, so misunderstood.
Yeah, and they're so honest, brutal honesty about how much it hurts. Akili Ka writes, I am no Buddha. Like, admitting I'm attached to my stuff, to my things, and letting go. It's hard.
It's real.
That honesty, that vulnerability, it's what pulls you in.
Totally.
And then there's this moment, just heartbreaking. Akili Ka just sobs. I'm sorry.
It's like they're apologizing for feeling human, for not being above the pain, the loss.
It's raw.
It's raw.
It's real. And I think anyone who's experienced loss, it just resonates.
Absolutely.
It's like searching for something to hold on to, you know, some kind of answer. In all the chaos, Akili Ka turns to, I guess you could say, a higher power, pleading almost. You have my attention now. Do I have yours? What do you want? What is the plan?
Desperation.
Right.
Feeling totally lost. But even in that, there's this tiny flicker of hope. Akili Ka finds a moment of stillness, and it's like a realization. There, I can hear it. You have breath, and that is all you need.
Yeah.
And that's a turning point. It's subtle, but it's there.
It's huge. And it's where Akili Ka's story takes this turn. And it's also where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive. That breath, that's a thing, right? It's like this tiny little thread holding everything together.
Exactly, yeah. It's like everything else is gone, but that breath, that's still there.
And it becomes this bridge to the next part of Akili Ka's story. They call it being on the run.
On the run.
Yeah, they're fleeing from, and I love that they call it the scene of an ominous, ever-growing shadow called stroke.
It's like it's this presence, right? Like something you can't escape.
Totally. And I think that image, that shadow, it's brilliant. It captures that feeling of stroke, like this threat that just lingers.
It's always there.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about anyone who's ever felt that way.
Yeah.
Displaced, having to leave behind a life they knew. It's like, it doesn't matter if it's a natural disaster or some kind of political thing, even just a personal loss.
Right. It's universal.
It is.
But even though we can see those connections, we got to remember, this is Akili Ka's story. This is their disaster. One thing, and it really stuck with me, they describe this darkness falling.
Yeah.
And the way they put it, it's as aggressively as spasticity.
Wow. Just think about that. Connecting the physical experience, those muscles, that tightness, to the emotional side of this whole thing. It is. It gives you this glimpse into how jarring, how disorienting it all must be.
Yeah. And in all of that, there's this destination, this place, Flagstaff. It represents a new beginning,
Oh, I see. It's like this light at the end of the tunnel.
But, and Akili Ka acknowledges this too, they say, the shadow of stroke's destruction will follow us everywhere.
Right.
But T, and this is the key, I plan next time to be ready.
What do they mean, be ready? Like, how can you prepare for something like this? It's impossible.
It's the question, isn't it? And it's where things get really interesting. That idea of being ready, I don't know, it just sticks with me.
Yeah.
What does that even mean in this context, to be ready? It's the big question, right?
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, it goes way beyond just the practical stuff. It's deeper than that. It's more about, like, your spirit. Yeah. That willingness to just face whatever life throws at you.
Which brings us to you. Like, think about it for a second. Have you ever dealt with something that big? That feeling of just being totally overwhelmed, like a shadow hanging over everything.
And what's so powerful about this story, about Akili Ka's story, it's specific, right? But it's also universal. We all go through loss, stuff that knocks us down. And what gets me, it's that even then, we still want to move forward, find some meaning in it all.
And the way they write, the details, they just grab you. We didn't just hear about loss, we felt it. That smell, those dumpsters overflowing, that apology, just raw and honest. Akili Ka's words, they painted a picture, They made us feel what it means to go through all of that. Exactly. And that's what makes it so powerful, this story. It's like proof. Proof that we can come back, even from the worst. No matter what, we can adapt, we can grow, and find meaning in places we never expected.
And so we leave Akili Ka at this new beginning, heading to Flagstaff, future's uncertain. What would you say to them? If you could, offer some words of encouragement, what would you say?
Oh, wow. What a question. And it makes you realize we all have our own stuff, right? Our own struggles. But we're all in it together. Sometimes just knowing that someone gets it, someone's rooting for you, that's everything.
It's like Akili Ka finding peace in that breath, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all we got, one breath at a time. Even when everything's changing, there's still that strength inside us and that chance for something new.